Today, I have an absolutely insane mother-in-law story. It's from the eyes of OP, who has to deal with this said mother-in-law, and I won't ruin the juicy details, but this one gets intense. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I present daily stories. If that's something you're interested in, check out the channel, and let's hop right into the highlighted story of the day. I have a big problem in my life, and let's just say it involves the mother-in-law. My name's Juliana, I'm a 28-year-old female. I'm also biracial. My mother's white, but my father is of Chinese descent. I've always been very smart and was on the honor roll of every school and class I attended. I used to be that kid that everyone was jealous of and wanted to be. I was popular, pretty, smart, and athletic. There's not many kids that don't like you when you win at all sports and science competitions that happen in or around your school. I always knew that boys like me because of my looks and my brains, but I always found it strange that other women, especially mothers of the boys that I dated or flirted with, never seemed to like me at all. Now I know what you're thinking, that people did not like me because I was Asian. You're probably right. I never thought much about these things, though, as studies were much more important to me. My father, or dad as I call him, immigrated here from China about a decade before I was born. He used to tell me stories about the difficulties he faced, how people never seemed to like him, and that people called him names and racist slurs after he met, dated, and then married my mom. My features had been much more Western when I was a child, but as I grew up, I started looking more and more like my father's side of the family. People, usually the old-fashioned and elderly ones, would always look at me different because of this. Well, fast forward a number of years. I was named valedictorian of my school, and shortly after, I was offered a scholarship from Stanford University. All my hard work had finally paid off. I got into the University of Chemistry's program and completed a 4-year degree. It was while completing this degree that I met the love of my life. His name was Andy. He was 5 years older than me. He was a businessman and was soon to inherit his father's business. He managed about a dozen or so commercial properties and was involved in their sale and other various businesses. He was the perfect man. Smart, considerate, and mostly important, he did not seem to care about my mixed heritage. The few white boys I had dated previously have been in it for the fun, but none of them ever wanted to tell me to meet their parents or introduce me as their girlfriend anywhere. It was a new and welcoming experience. We met by chance at a university seminar. He'd been invited there as a speaker, and I've gone with my best friend, Lynn, who was also a business major and had wanted to attend the event. Lynn wanted to ask him a question, but had been too shy and embarrassed. I'd asked the question for her in her place. He smiled at me, and I remember thinking how handsome and charismatic he was. After the seminar, there was a lunch break. He'd come up to me and we'd hit it off right away. He flirted with me and asked for my number. I've been going through a dry spell recently when it came to men, and he was so darn cute. I immediately gave it to him. He called me later that night and asked me out on a date. We met up at a coffee shop later and surprised me with a picnic down the road. We found out that we had a lot of things in common, and he was very easy to talk to. We went on several vacations together and generally spent a lot of time together. I soon invited him to meet my parents. My parents loved him. He was charming and joked around with them. They had always wanted me to have a stable relationship and settle down with someone. Maybe have a couple kids or something. I was well on my way to having their dream come true. A few weeks after he met my parents, Andy introduced me to his family. His father had passed away a long time ago, and so it was just his mother and him. He was an only child, and he warned me that his mother was a bit old-fashioned and very set in her ways. I didn't listen to him, thinking how bad could she really be? She was nothing like Andy described. Our initial meeting went very well. She was a short, middle-aged lady with prematurely graying hair. She welcomed me warmly into her home and talked to me about all sorts of things. She said that I was very pretty and that she'd always wanted a daughter. She joked about Andy's childhood and his hobbies, and reminisced at the length about Andy's late father. There was something that she said that was kind of odd, though. We just finished dinner and we were joking about our relationship, and she said, quote, "Well, marriage isn't for everybody, I guess. There's a long way to go till you'll be at that anyways." I was slightly shocked, but did not want to make a scene, so I let the comment go. The next few years went by very quickly. When I was 27, I got admission into a PhD degree program related to my field. Soon after that, on Valentine's Day, Andy proposed to me. It was the happiest day of my life. I said yes, 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 of course. And like any typical woman, began planning my wedding to my fiancée. I was going through some financial difficulties at the time, as I had a lot of student debt and loans piled up from my university degree. My current PhD program did not pay us all that much, and so, after talking to my parents, I decided to move in with Andy and his mother. We decided that we would have the wedding about 6 months later, during which I could finish my studies and maybe find a job. The PhD program had a thesis part that needed a lot of research. Because of that, I bought a lot of chemicals and other lab materials like beakers, syringes, test tubes, etc. I wanted to set up a lab in the house so I could do experiments without disturbing Andy or his mom. After talking to them, I converted the basement of the house we lived in into my own scientific lab, where I took all my chemistry stuff. I love mixing chemicals and changing colors. It makes me happy like a little kid, and when I had some raw materials or chemicals in excess, I would mix them up just for fun. One Sunday around lunchtime, I was mixing some sodium hydroxide into a flask of phenolphthalein. I stirred the flask by hand gently, mixing up the chemicals, and the color started slowly turning pink. Suddenly, I heard the sound of glass breaking. I looked towards the door and saw my future mother-in-law and her hands over her mouth. There was a broken tray and pieces of glass from a cup maybe on the ground, and her eyes rolled backwards in her head, and she looked like she was about to fall. She grabbed the wall in support and slowly took her hand off her mouth. "Oh, what did you just do?" She started yelling at me. I don't know what I did wrong. I told her I was mixing chemicals together for my project, but she was convinced that there was something supernatural about what I was doing. She made a sign of the cross in front of her and said I was doing the work of the devil. I repeated myself over and over, telling her that I've done nothing wrong and it was a basic scientific reaction. She ran away, still talking about the devil possessing me as she ran. I heard the sound of the front door closing, then heard the car engine start. I went upstairs to see that she was gone. I was now alone at home and did not know what to do. I called Andy at once and told him what just happened. He told me, "See, I told you my mother was old-fashioned, and that she believed in this nonsense." He told me not to worry and said that he'll call his mother and explain to her about what happened. I was relieved and hung up. To please my mother-in-law, I made her favorite dish for dinner and baked her favorite pie for dessert. It was very late at night when Andy and his mother came home. His mother went upstairs without even looking at me or eating the food I made. Andy then told me that he had called his mother and tried to explain everything, but she hasn't listened. Stubbornly, she had said that I was doing witchcraft. She told Andy that she did not want to come home because she did not want to stay in the house with me anymore. Andy's been tired but has gone to find her. She had gone to her old friend's house and Andy brought her home with much difficulty. I was sad to see that Andy's mom thought this of me. He told me that he was on my side and that he would talk to my mother again this morning. When morning came, Andy and I woke up early to make her favorite breakfast. We just wanted to bribe her. When she woke up, she said she did not want to eat or touch anything I made. She told us that she wanted to talk to me privately. Andy did not want to leave me alone, but I told him to go. When we were alone, his mother got angry again and said nasty things to me. She told me that she had talked to her friend when she had left yesterday, and her friend had told her that Chinese girls were also sometimes witches. We could make bad potions and force boys to like us and do what we want to them. I was very shocked and literally just started crying. But she wasn't finished yet. And then she said she did not want me to live in her house anymore. She did not want to live with a witch, and I would curse her and Andy. She said that I've tricked Andy and that I was a bad person. Well, I cried even more and begged her to understand. I told her I could prove it to her that I hadn't done any magic, and I was innocent, but she screamed at me again that she wasn't going to be tricked anymore. She then literally ran upstairs and took all my things out of my wardrobe, throwing them into shopper bags. She came downstairs and threw all them outside of the house and said she's kicking me out. Andy tried to stop her, but she did not listen. She kept calling me a witch and telling me to stay away from her and Andy. I was very confused and just getting angry at this point, so I took my things and left. I got into an Uber and went back to my parents' house. While I was going there, my phone rang. It was Andy, calling me again and again and again and again. I was getting angry at him, so I did not pick up his calls. He just stood there and watched as his mother was throwing me out of the house. I did not want to talk to him, and when I got home, I turned off my phone. I told my parents what happened, and my father was very angry and wanted to go talk to Andy's mother. I had to stop him. I knew that it would only make things worse. In the evening, Andy called me again, and he told me he was sorry, and that he would make sure that nothing like that would happen again. He came to our house in the middle of the night and knocked on my window. He brought me a bouquet of flowers and asked me to forgive him, saying he loved me. I'd calmed down a bit by that time, so I relented, telling him that I forgave him also. We spent the next few days at my house, and we did not talk about his mother. I noticed her calling him a few times, but he never picked up that phone. Things went back to normal after that, and the next few weeks passed by with nothing out of the ordinary. One day, as I was leaving a grocery store, I saw a man that I was sure I'd seen earlier that day at a gift shop where I'd stopped to buy a present for my parents' anniversary. I thought the man might be following me, so I went into a few random shops. Whenever I came out, the man was standing nearby, facing towards the opposite direction. I realized suddenly that my mother-in-law had hired someone to follow me. It was the only explanation that made sense, but I could not believe it. Why was she doing this? It was so stupid. I thought about the spy movies that I love to watch. Every hero or heroine did the same thing. Lead the spy around and around and catch them from behind. So, I did the same thing. I entered a large bookstore and hid myself behind one of the shelves. Like you knew he would, the man followed me into the shop. I went around in a circle, then came back up from behind. I took a few pictures of him from my mobile phone so I would have proof. Then I tapped him on the shoulder. "Excuse me, sir," I said. "Are you following me, and why?" He tried to say he did not know me, but I threatened him, saying I knew all the place he followed me and I'll get evidence and go to the police. Then he said, "All right, fine. This woman asked me to follow you and report your whereabouts to her." He said Andy's mother's name. I immediately went to Andy's house and met with his mom. I told her about everything that's happened and said I'm going to the police. She was very, very scared and said that she only did this so I would leave her son alone. And then came home and I repeated everything to him. I told him I wasn't sure that this relationship's working anymore. I took off my ring and gave it to him, saying I can't marry a man who cannot stand up to his mother just to protect me. Andy asked me not to leave, but I've made up my mind. I went back home and decided to focus on my studies. I got very depressed about the situation, but did my best to go forward. 2 weeks later, Andy contacted me again. He said that he admitted his mom to therapy and that she was getting better. He also said that she would apologize to me soon and that he was so very sorry. He said that he would move out of his mother's house and rent an apartment with me to show that he was committed to me, and he loved me more than anything in this world. After this, I decided to forgive him. He was trying to make things easier for me, and that was the kind of man I wanted in my life. His mother also apologized to me a few days later, and I decided to forgive her as well. I've learned my lesson though, and I've decided I will always keep an eye on her to make sure she doesn't do anything like this again. Okay guys, there's a quick little update segment. It's only a paragraph long, but it has some crucial details. It says, "Once I read more opinions from people, I realized how effed up my mother-in-law was. Good thing I got away, and yeah. It's been 6 months. I've blocked both my boyfriend and his mother-in-law from all the places. I haven't found any new guys, but I am quite single." Another thing I discovered is that mother-in-law's friend who told her about the Chinese girl being the most racist woman you've ever met, she's as nasty as anyone can be. Don't worry guys, I'm not gonna go back to him ever. I was emotional in the beginning, but now I'm strong and serious. I hate him for not defending me against his crazy mom. Promises after promises, it just never ended. This story was insane. I told you it was a crazy mother-in-law story. I just kept getting so many red flags from OP's husband, who doesn't seem to have a spine or won't stand up for his wife. What she did was innocent, and it's completely outrageous that mother-in-law took it to this extent. I'm so glad how this story ended. She cut him off, ended the relationship, and finally she can get some peace of her own mind without having to deal with this mother-in-law. Guys, let me know what you thought about this story in the comment section down below. Do you have any mother-in-law stories you want to share? I'd love to hear it. Okay. We still have one more story left in today's video. Also guys, I have some exciting news. If you don't know, I started a second channel that won't have animation, so the videos will get uploaded quicker and there'll be more content on top of this channel. So check that out, it's going to be in the description below, and let's hop right into story number 2. So, I worked as a host for a restaurant last summer. It was during COVID, so we had a lot of tables open, but not enough waiters, so we weren't allowed to seat people at those tables. It was a little past lunchtime and the wait was about 30 minutes, which wasn't that long compared to other days. During rushes, the wait times could be 2 hours. A mom and her son, who looked about 10, waddled in through the door. She asked me what the wait time is, and I tell her. Her and her son's mouth drop immediately, and she says in the most shocked voice, 30 minutes? At this point, I know I'm dealing with a Karen and a Karen Jr. Also, if 30 minutes is too long for some people, that's fine. Just leave. I can't do crap about it. Karen says this, "There are so many empty tables though. Why can't you seat us? There's an empty one right there." She points at the closest empty table. "Well, ma'am, that table's not assigned to a waiter, so you wouldn't be served. And there's still a 30-minute wait ahead of you." "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Do you know how hot it is outside? We can't wait out there. Are you kidding? Why don't you guys have AC outside? You expect us to just wait?" Thank goodness for mask, because that almost made me lose my crap. Also, there were other people waiting outside just fine, but I guess she has selective vision. "I'm sorry, and sincerely, I'm sorry for not having outdoor air conditioning, ma'am. Do you want to speak to a manager?" So, I get the manager to come speak with her and tell Karen she'll be out in a few minutes. Her son huffs and glares around. Just at that moment though, a waiter clocks in at the table the Karen wanted to open, and was seated with the next person on the wait list. and I had the pleasure of taking them to their table right in front of Karen and Karen Jr. Honestly, I was scared of the wrath I knew I was about to unleash, but it was glorious seeing her face as someone else got the table she thought she was entitled to. She immediately started bashing me, saying the wait was too long and asking how I could seat someone else when she claimed the table. I've had enough of it, so I went to get the manager again and let her deal with Karen. I stayed in the back so Karen could not bring me into the whole ordeal in front of my manager. But she ended up leaving to eat somewhere else, where she'll probably have to go wait to be seated anyways. Well, guys, out of all the stories I've read, I can't tell you that I'm not surprised. Yep, another Karen going off at a restaurant employee. Who would have guessed it? I think this Karen was specifically weird, though. I mean, does she not know how a restaurant works? Does she not know there's a waiting line? Does she not know there's a handful of people right behind her waiting in line as well? Guys, do you think the waitress handled this properly, or what else would you have done differently? Let me know in the comment section down below. And that's all the stories I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the content. Consider subscribing and have a wonderful night. Mr. Reddito will catch you in the next one.